rolling. Hey, first thing I want to say, I don't see them here. I love the Adams. Y'all got the best of the best. You are extremely blessed. I've been privileged over many years to watch Brother Adams when he first came to North Little Rock, watch him grow and develop into the absolute leader, really a global leader that he is, because people around the globe are looking to him and they're looking to you and watching what you're doing. And it's so much fun to see what you'll have going on right here in Memphis and seeing the Lord move in this way. And so I'm excited. So let's just kind of dive in. And you're probably asking yourself two questions. Let's just jump right to it. Who on earth is Matt Herndon? And what on earth is he doing here? And I've asked myself that exact same question. Second thing is, why is it important for me to be familiar with this concept of selling? So first thing, I'll just kind of explain who I am. Born and raised in North Little Rock, Arkansas. When I was in the 4th grade, my mother started dragging me to this weird church. It was a Pentecostal church and I knew nothing about it. And I vividly remember, because I knew nothing. We were Baptist Assembly, we were everything beforehand. And I vividly remember I was in the 4th grade and I had a pillow that was probably just a couple inches big. I would shove that pillow in one pocket, and then I had one of the original Game Boys. At the time it was new and hot. But one of those big Game Boy, you remember those, I'd shove it in the other pocket. And I'd come to church and during song service I'd play my Game Boy and during preaching I'd pull out the pillow and I'd take it out. And I did that. But you know, it wasn't long until I started actually paying attention to what was going on. And I started feeling the power of the Holy Ghost. And it was a little while, I was 15 years old. And I'll never forget the Sunday night I lifted my hands and God filled me with the Holy Ghost. I can take you right to the spot where that happened. And from that day forward, my life has absolutely never been the same. And I can tell you that was the day, obviously, for everybody. That's the turning point of your life. The second was simply just locking in to the ecosystem that we have of growing yourself, building on yourself, reaching out, taking risks, and seeing what God can do. And sales. I got started in sales at the age of 16 years old. Next year, I will have done this for 2 decades. So if you subscribe to this author named Malcolm Gladwell, he kind of popularized this idea of it takes 10,000 hours of doing something to master it and to be proficient in it. If you follow his thinking on that, I will have done that 2 times over. So I can't say I'm fully mastered, but you know, it's hard. We're having fun here. And so why is it important for you to be familiar with this idea of selling? You know, Brother Haley stole my notes already. Well, you know, obviously, there are things in life, whether you are ever in sales, that you will be selling. Most importantly, it's yourself. You are always going to be selling yourself. How many of you have ever had a job? Ever had a job? Raise your hand. You had to sit through an interview, didn't you? How many of you have a spouse? Or if you don't yet, do you want to have a spouse? You've had to sell them on the idea of, hey, I'm the best person there is. And then, you know, once you get this job, you don't want to just stay on the bottom, stay in the lower level. You want to try to sell yourself to constantly promote. Hey, if you ever own your own business, you don't have a business without customers. And so you're constantly not only selling your product and your services, but yourself as the most competent person that can fulfill this job and do what you need to do. So that's what we're going to talk about tonight. Now listen, I only have probably 20, 30 minutes worth of content. Afterwards, I want to open this up for questions. I want you guys to please dig in. Text Brother Hunter, blow his phone up, ask him all kinds of questions. Let's have some fun, okay? Are you okay with me? Are we going to have some fun tonight?
Yes.
All right, I love seeing this crowd. All right, so Selling 101. Let me get back to where I'm supposed to be here. So the most fundamental concept, what is selling? Well, the first thing is it's simply communicating with others. That's all it is. You are just relaying words, you're relaying value, you're relaying expressions. You are communicating with others. Second thing is you are providing solutions for people's needs. Okay? What do I mean by that? You're providing solutions. When you go to Walmart and they sell you toothpaste, you needed the toothpaste. They're helping you. When you go to the car dealership and you need a car, they're selling you, providing that need that you have. Okay? And now I want to take a moment and just kind of back up and let's cover why is this style of weekly class so important? Because you're getting a constant drip of good every time you come to these. There's an author by the name of Tim Grover who said, in talking about motivation, kind of what you have going on here every week, Tim Grover said, motivation is like licking the icing off of a cake. It tastes great. It gives you a sugar rush, but eventually that sugar rush fades and it takes you right back to where you were. Zig Ziglar said something along the same lines when he said, motivation doesn't last. But then he said, neither does fading. That's why we recommend both often and daily, in your case, weekly. But what I love about this is motivation, and these classes, exactly what you're doing, they pick you up off of your feet. They get you up from where you were, where you're stagnant, stuck, and not doing anything. They get you up on your feet. But it's up to you to not just stand there. You've got to turn that motivation and what we're doing here into movement and into momentum. So take what we say tonight, what you hear next week and the weeks that are coming, turn this into movement. The one translation says, I've got it right here. Yeah, one translation says, that's why we're to run with endurance the race that is set before us. So don't stop. Take that motivation, take that momentum, run with endurance, and keep on going. Don't just walk, don't jog. Get this thing on full speed. Take what you have, run with it. From what I understand, we've had Brother Stephen Haney a couple weeks ago. We've had Brother Seth Pomeroy, some of my absolute closest friends. Brother Seth Pomeroy is actually my next door neighbor, so I have to literally say closest friends. But you got some good stuff here, and from what I'm hearing in the words, you got quite a bit more. Henry Ford said, and think about this, nothing happens until someone sells something. And talking about, again, toothpaste. You got to go to the store to buy clothes. You're not making your own clothes. You're not growing your own food any longer. You're not having to do this. So this whole world, as we saw with COVID, everything kind of shut down, didn't it? It became hard to get some basic necessities at times. You remember when the toilet paper aisles were wiped clean? You realize life would be tough if you couldn't buy and sell some of the basics, because we're not doing that on our own. But one of the most pivotal pieces, and I mentioned this earlier, is you've got to be comfortable with selling yourself, okay? And so what we're going to talk about is, when do you want to sell yourself? I mentioned interviewing for a job, finding a spouse. Another one is, like we had said earlier, witnessing to somebody. When you are witnessing about the goodness of God and what He's done in your life, if you're over there looking like a sloppy mess, you're unshoveled, unput together, how convincing is that God's really done something for you? But when you stand boldly, proudly, clean cut, women, you've got your hair looking nice, you're looking godly, that shows something, especially in today's world. So I want to show you all for a little bit, how do you sell yourself? Let's take a moment and just kind of dive into this, because this is really some important stuff here. So the first thing I would say on how to sell yourself is you've got to have, let me see here, you've got to have confidence, okay? And what do I mean by having confidence? Well, there are a couple things what I mean by that. When you portray confidence, you're not just cocky, arrogant. That's not what I'm trying to say. When I say confidence, I mean you're certain and you're sure of yourself. One of the biggest things you can do with this is body language. When you stand straight, shoulders back, smile, and you just kind of have your head up in the air, that means you are comfortable with yourself, you know what you're doing, you know where you are, and you're okay with that. Okay? Body language is a big thing on this. Stand straight. Another one, look people in the eye. That's hard sometimes. If you're not used to it, it can be difficult. But as we talk about this, I want you to kind of think, how often do I do that? Am I proficient with this? Is this something I need to be working on? Okay? Look people in the eye. Stand straight, stand firm, stand strong. Next thing is a handshake. How many times have you walked up and you shaking somebody's hand and they've got that cold, dead fish, just wet-handed handshake? It does not, you notice it, don't you? But when someone walks up, they've got a good firm handshake, they're looking at you, making eye contact, they're squared up. There's a total different picture about somebody. And, it takes seconds for you to square someone up and assess them just by your first introduction. And did you know your first introduction, I don't remember the stats on this, but it's literally seconds is what it takes for someone to square you up, assess who you are, what you are, and determine what they think about you. It's not what you say afterwards, it's those very first seconds. Okay? Remember, we're talking about how we sell ourselves in the interview, with the potential spouse, with the customer. So this is what we're showing you here. Next thing, be the first to speak. When you walk up to someone, if you psychologically take control when you are the first person to speak. Hello, how are you? How's your day going? Just acknowledge them. It doesn't have to be any long monologue. Just say something. Acknowledge them, be kind, and just acknowledge them. Really is the number one thing here. The next thing I want to show you, I want to talk about real quickly, is the Queen Elizabeth, the current Queen of England. When she was a child, she was very timid, very bashful, wasn't comfortable around groups of people, and she felt when she walked into a room of people, it was rather daunting. So her mother said to her, what you want to do when you walk into a room is walk through the middle of the door, the dead center of the door. And by that she means don't do it, don't go in apologetically, walk in as though I'm in charge. And when you do these little things, you stand straight, you make eye contact, you walk in as if you're in charge, you may not really feel that way. How many times have your knees been knocking? And you're scared, you're nervous, and you want to portray this, but you're really not there. Well, I want to remind you, who's beside you? Who's your partner in this? If you've got the Holy Ghost, if you're living this way, you're living this life, God's right there with you. If you don't have confidence in Him. Okay? Stand with Him, stand beside Him, because He'll make up where you're lacking and where your gaps are. So realize God's in control of this. And so when you start really realizing this, hey, it's not about me, it's about Him. It's not about my business, it's about what I can do for Him through my business. And that when you start really assessing that, it's easy to stand straight. It's easier to make that eye contact, shake that hand, because you realize God's taking the gap. Next thing, and this is hard, and I beg you, do not judge me tonight on this one. I am endeavoring myself. But simply be articulate, okay? And so when I say being articulate, it's simply being able to express your ideas and thoughts to your audience in a way that makes it easier for them to understand what you mean or the points you're making. Now, we are in the South. We're in the deep South. And here, it's easy to, tell everybody where you're walking and talking and what you're doing and just not really be clear, clean, and articulate. Take time on this. And try to end, the words that we are the most, and I say we because I'm guilty as charged. The words that we're the most horrible at are usually the words that end in ing, end in t. Practice that. And try to sharpen that, because when you become more articulate, people hear you, they understand you better, and they are able to follow along with what you're saying, the picture you're painting. So make sure you take your time on that. Another thing is practice projecting your voice. How often have you walked up to somebody, you've introduced yourself, you've talked to them, in the middle of a conversation you can barely hear a word they're saying. It's not very convincing. A lot of times in that moment, our brains shut down from what they're saying and your mind starts wandering off. You start thinking about what you got to do, what you're going to eat for lunch, what you're going to get for dinner, the call you got to make. When people are not projecting their voice, they're not getting your attention, you lose their attention. Or they lose yours too. So make sure when you're speaking to somebody, project that. Be strong. And one of the best things to do is try this when you're riding down the road. Try this when you are by yourself, nobody's around. And one thing, and I just thought about this, I am in no way perfect. I have tried. I have actually overcome an extremely strong Southern dialect, Southern accent. You can still tell where I'm from, but it used to be much worse. But one thing I have always done and tried is in prayer. When you're under a pew talking to God, that's a good time to try to remove some of the faults that you have. Trying to be articulate. He knows what you're saying. He's not missing a word. But it's just something to think about. That's a good time to try this and rehearse it. And pay attention to the final word in each sentence and just follow through with what you're saying. And one thing about being articulate is you don't have to have the largest words with the most syllables. You don't have to sound like you've got a PhD in grammar or whatever this is. Actually, it's the exact opposite. When you speak easily, freely, you use simple words, people actually follow you better. So there's a study that some PhDs do, that they analyze people's words and the words they use, and they assign a grade level of how clearly you speak to a grade level. For instance, Barack Obama and Jimmy Carter. Presidents are always good because everywhere they say is documented. Barack Obama and Jimmy Carter were assigned a 9th grade level of speaking fluency. That's what they were. Donald Trump was assigned, he was given at the level of 4th grade. Think about that. How many people follow Trump? Do I got a bunch of Republicans in this room? No, the people followed him, and they hung on what he said. But he had a 4th grade level of speaking. Why was it? It wasn't because he was using big words. He was using words everybody understood. Everybody could grasp these pictures because they weren't overly articulate, overly difficult. Okay? A lot of times, how many times have you heard politicians speak and they use a word you aren't familiar with, or it's too formal, too rigid, and you don't really pay attention? Do the exact opposite of that. Start painting these pictures simple words. People will follow it, and it will resonate much more. Next thing on the list. Be yourself. Often we have heard this term, and I've been guilty of this, but we've heard the term, fake it till you make it. I pull away from that. Don't. Be yourself. Okay? Now, be professional. Don't ever pull away from that. Be godly. But be comfortable with who you are, where you are, and what situations you are in. There are times I have been in, I probably should give you a little bit more backstory here. I have been in sales since I was 16. I have been in sales almost 2 decades now. And there are many times I'm asked questions that I have no clue what the answer is. And I have learned through trial and error over the years that instead of trying to ramble off something that would impress somebody and give them just some answer, because they know what they're talking about even though I don't, they much more respect me saying, hey, I'm not sure. Let me find out. Let me get back to you. So be yourself. Don't try to portray something that you're not. People see that. I actually, talking about being professional, I put in a real estate offer last week where there was an offer on some land I was looking at, and I kind of got passed on to a new rookie real estate agent. And he sent me several deals and several things to take a look at, and one of them looked pretty interesting. So I called him one day and I said, hey, I think we can do this. Let's put an offer in on this land. And this was just last week. And he said, okay, hang on just a second. Next thing I hear, a toilet flush. And I'm sitting there thinking, okay, well, what's going on here? So I hear a toilet flush. It happens to all of us. Not that big of a deal. I'll let that pass. Well, then next thing I hear is him just running straight into it. It sounded like he was on his breath, but I hear him with his phone kind of covered up. He's on the phone. I got him on the phone. He's putting an offer right now. And I'm sitting there listening to this thinking, who is this guy? I'm about to put in a multi-$100,000 real estate offer, and he's over there, and I don't know who he is. So I went through it, and we went ahead and put in the offer. And 2 days later, it didn't go through. I really lowballed it, so I wasn't expecting it to. But 2 days later, he calls me back just to kind of tell me what was going on. And as he was talking to me, I started listening. And I promise you, if he wasn't in the shower, he had just turned the shower off. And he called me. I didn't hear him. What I'm saying is, we all have to do that stuff. But there are times to be on the phone, and there's times not to. There are times to be professional, and times to kind of set business and life to the side. So be yourself, but be professional, okay? Just kind of touch base on that one. And show up every day just being the best version of yourself. Knowing that you may not be exactly where you want to be, but you're working on it. And I call myself a recovering perfectionist. And I say that because I have struggled with perfectionism over the years. And that can be crippling. And it can be crippling because you know what you're doing isn't perfect, so you don't even want to try. You don't want to go through with it, you don't want to do it because it's not perfect. Ira Glass, y'all may have heard the name, I'm sure you have. He's a radio host on NPR. He actually talks about this thing called the taste gap. And what that is he said, when you're working on a project, you're starting something, you're building something, you're doing things, your tastes are up here. You know what you like, you know what you want, you know where you want that to be. But when you first get started, your talents actually may be a little bit lower. You're not able to, when you put forth your first project, your first deal, you look at it and think, that is a mess. That is not what I hoped it would be. It's not where my tastes are. And so what he's saying is that your taste gap is the difference between where you want it to be and where it actually is. Now the secret is, the only way to raise your talent is by continuously pumping out product, pumping out effort. And by doing what you know is the best, but by doing that, it steadily raises to where your talents will eventually match your tastes. And at that point, that's where your taste gap is neglected at that point, and it's gone, and you'll be proficient in exactly what you're trying to be. So just because your output doesn't match what you want it to be, keep trying, keep digging. So be yourself. Next thing, this is the most elemental, basic, fundamental part of how to sell yourself. Okay? Freely smile. What I've got right here, that's my middle baby. That's Evie Joy. Have you ever noticed with children, they freely smile. They freely giggle, and you see a child smile, you can't help but just smile back at them. When you smile at somebody, genuinely smile, it is a universal sign of welcome. When you freely smile at somebody, it disarms people. And it really, honestly, it softens them up. So as I said earlier on just simply being confident, give somebody a firm handshake, stand straight, be confident, but freely smile as you do that. You'd be amazed at what it does to people. It softens them up instantly. When you smile like this, it says, I'm friendly, I'm approachable. You can come to me. I'm not a barrier, a brick wall here. I want you to come. A smile, genuine smile, added with the question, how may I help you? What can I do for you? You'd be amazed at what that will do for people. When you genuinely smile and you ask, what can I do for you? It turns people around. And I've noticed that over the years myself. I have many times. And let me tell you another thing about smile. This is the last one on it. And I'm actually wrapping up my part here. Did you know that a smile can be heard? Try it next time. A smile can be heard across the telephone. When you answer the phone, hello. Or you answer the phone, hello. It's the smallest, most minute thing, but our ears pick up on it. And so when you're smiling on a phone, somebody else hears that. And I promise you it helps. And so that is how to sell yourself. Be confident. Stand boldly. You want to be articulate. Don't rush. Don't try to ram things through. Just take your time. Speak freely. Next thing is just be yourself. And then after that is smile freely. And so what I want you to do, and I told you I wasn't going to be terribly long with this, but I want you guys to step out of your comfort zone a little bit. When you are amongst yourselves, when you're amongst strangers, step out of your comfort zone and be that. Learn to be yourself. And when you learn to be yourself, you can sell yourself and you can sell anything else. Because I'll tell you, over 20 years of doing this, I have learned sales are relationships. That's all it is. In my business, my sales transactions, I sell managed services, copiers, printers, IT, hardware, a little bit all of it. It's not unusual for our sales cycles to be 6 months. 12 months, sometimes multi-years. And so in this process, my job is simply getting to know these people and them getting to trust me. Because before they can cut a check or a purchase order for $1.4 million, which thankfully I just had that a couple months ago, before they do that, they don't want to know who you are. They want to make sure that you're going to come through with what you say. And so you have to sell yourself and have those relationships. And so what I've talked about up to this point is simply how to sell yourself. How to do yourself and be comfortable in front of folks. So that's what I've got for right now. Do we have any questions come in yet?
We do have some questions here.
All right, we got some questions. Let's dive into. I don't want to change the slide. She's so pretty, but I'm going to go ahead anyway. And now she's actually lost her two front teeth, so her smile is even cuter. But let's dive into some questions here.
Okay, so the people say sometimes you have to believe in what you sell in order to be able to sell it. So to what degree do you believe in that? Do you have to be if you're working for AT&T, do you have to be die hard against Verizon or something like that? Or how do you navigate that? If you're at a Ford dealership as a salesperson, do you badmouth Chevy, or
I like this question. Do you have to fully believe in what you're selling in order to make it, in order to sell the product? Yes and no. Yes, you should believe what you have and what you have going on is a viable product. If you know what you're selling is junk, why are you selling it? Why are you wasting your time? If what you're selling is trash, back up. I promise you there's plenty of other products, plenty of other stuff. If that's your business, you're not going to stop that and start a new business, okay? If what you're selling, you do not and cannot believe in that, we got bigger problems there, okay? But if it's something that you believe in, hey, this is strong. I know it, I trust it, I'm okay with it, perfect, that's all you need. Second follow-up question to that is, there's always competition. Your number one competition is, obviously we have others. Second one, though, is them just simply not doing anything. So your competition may just be, hey, I decided not to move forward on whatever this is, buy X, Y, or Z. But if there are other players involved, you will never get anywhere by running them down, by talking negatively about your competition. Now, I often say, hey, those are good folks, because I'm in a world that we've got stiff competition. And I will never say, oh, don't waste your time on there, they'll cut you dry, they'll do this or that. You'll hear me say, hey, those are good folks. I've seen them, I've worked with them, because we're in my circle, it's a really small circle, so a lot of folks know each other, and we run into each other often. You'll hear me say, hey, those are good people. They'll do what they tell you they're going to do. But here's why I'm better. Here's why you would be better off going with me. So you'll never get anywhere by running them down to build yourself up. All you do is you tear both of yourself. You tear you both down. All right, what do you have for the next question?
If you're selling a product or a service, how do you know when you're speaking to the right person?
Oh, that's a great question. If you're selling a product or a service, how do you know when you're speaking to the right person? I actually have a slide on this. Let me slide over here. How do you know if you've got the right person? Or we use the term a qualified person. And there's this idea, it's an acronym called MANT. We've got money, authority, need, and timing. So if you want to see how if you've got the right person on the line, let's say you're buying a car, they're buying a house, they're buying something other than just walking into Walmart and $10 purchase. Something of size. They have to have MANT. Okay? First thing is money. They've got to have the money. Let's say you use a car, for example. If you've got a $30,000 car that you're trying to sell, somebody might come up and say, man, this is a beautiful car. I want it. Give it to me. I'll pay you right now. And you say, oh, great, it's $30,000. And their jaw drops. And they say, well, I've only got 6. You're not going to get very far with that. They don't have the money for it. Okay? Next thing is the authority. Let's say that same person walks up, they tell you, hey, I've got $30,000. I'm ready, let's go. But you find out they're a 17-year-old, their parent will absolutely not let them buy this thing. Or if you're in a business deal, and the person who wants it says, yeah, we've got the budget, I absolutely love this device, this widget, this thing, I want to go for it. But when you find out they're a lower level employee that has zero say in what that company's going to buy. You get what I'm saying? They don't have the authority. Next thing is need. Going back to the car example, you try to tell somebody, hey, I got this beautiful car. It's $30,000. They've got the money. They've got the authority. But they've already got one just like it. If they got one in red, why would they want one in blue? You got to see where the need is, okay? If someone's looking for a truck, it's because they need a truck. You're not really going to help them with your shiny blue car. So make sure that they got the need there. And next thing on this, how to find somebody that is qualified, is timing. And a car analogy is a perfect analogy. You just bought a car 6 months ago. How bad do you need another car right now? You really don't. The timing's off. You know, with vehicles, you will eventually. Your engine's going to blow up, tires are going to fall off. Eventually, you will, with that timing come through, the timing will be right. So, in order to find someone who is qualified, they've got to be able to check all the boxes for the term MANT. Money, authority, need, and timing. What's another question we've got? Hey, is this okay? All right. If y'all send me your questions, or if you need to think about it, just pop up and ask me.
Is it possible to oversell something? How do you balance being pushy versus hands-off?
Ooh. All right, read that one more time.
So is
My
it
attention
possible?
span's short.
Is it possible to like oversell something, be too aggressive? Like how do you balance being pushy and like helping them versus being hands-off and just like
Oh man, I love this. So I asked one of my closest friends. His name is Mike Holmes. He goes to my church. He's phenomenal. I love him. He's been in sales for 25 plus years. And I asked him the other day, I said, if you ask somebody what is their top tip in sales, what would it be? And he said, tell it, don't sell it. And what he means by that is, don't be pushy. Don't go out there. And let me back up. I told you I started selling at 16 years old. I started selling in the middle of our mall. Back then it was really cool to be at the mall. And I started selling in the middle of the mall at one of those kiosks, selling cell phones. And I was the person that badgered you as you walked by. Hey, you want a free phone? Free phone? And I would almost chase you down asking, do you want a phone? I learned at that age to be very pushy, because you kind of had to, because people are walking to the Gap to buy a new pair of jeans. They're not looking for a cell phone. But you have to try to get their attention. And in that world, that works, and it's how you actually make your transactions. But nobody enjoys that. How often do you enjoy being chased down by someone who's pushing? You never do. And let me tell you this. I'm so glad you asked this, Hunter. A pushy salesperson will make a sale. You knock on enough doors, you badger enough people, you will get a sale essentially, eventually. But you will never get a second sale. Yeah. Nobody will ever come back to you and say, you know what, you hounded me so well last time, let's go again. It never happens. You'll never get anywhere by being pushy. You'll never make a full income, let me put it that way. But when you flip that and you tell it, you don't sell it, you have the idea of being a servant. Of, hey, here's my job is educating you on this product. You've got money, you've got authority, you've got need, you've got time. Now let me tell you about what I offer. My business, how mine is superior to everything else. And by simply having this servant mindset of instead of pushing, you're pulling. When you start trying to pull people in, that's when you got someone who's enticed, who likes the idea, they like the product, they've got this MANT, and you start pulling them in by telling them what you're doing, by telling and sharing. You will have someone who likes the transaction, enjoys the process, and will come back and be there for life. It'll be a lifelong customer every time. All right. We have any other questions?
Yes. When talking to people, how do you find their needs or pain points? How do you get that information?
When talking to people, how do you find their needs or their pain points? Okay? So let me kind of give you a little bit of example of my world. I told you I've been in sales for 20 years. Started off cell phones for the first 4 and 5. I actually worked at AT&T. Funny story, I was in the middle of the store, the AT&T store, the day the very first iPhone was launched. And I remember seeing the line just wrapped around the building twice over, and had some fun, and that was all great. Got into life and health insurance. Did that for a while until I graduated college, and then I stepped into the world that I'm in now. And I've been very blessed. And thankfully, just a little plug here, side plug. The Lord blessed me this year to get into the land business. So I am now selling land. If you haven't looked into that, by all means, I would suggest you look into it. But how do you find people where they are and what their needs are? So I said all that to say, my world now is, like I said, selling services, selling hardware, selling managed services, IT services, and so forth. When I sit down in front of somebody, a lot of times it's someone I've never met before. They don't know me, I don't know them. My main customer is actually government and education. The state of Arkansas is by far my biggest customer. All the departments, all the divisions, school districts. I've got the largest school district in the entire state. So I've got big customers, and they're busy. They've got lots of stuff going on. Last thing they want is a pesky salesperson there. But that's where you kind of start getting into that servant mindset. But how do you find out what their needs are? There's this term called operating reality. And what I mean by that is when I'm sitting at their desk and we're chatting, I want to start making them comfortable. So first thing you do is you build rapport. You find out, ask them about their kids, ask them about that golf trophy they have on the wall or whatever, the picture of them boating in Florida. Start asking them little questions about that, but then start finding out about their needs. The more you can get someone talking, the more you'll find out every time. If you do a majority of the talking, you will never find their needs. You'll never find what's going on. The more you get them talking, the more you get into what we call their operating reality. You find out, hey, this is the problem I had today. This is the problem I had last week. This is an issue we have. This is a situation we have going on. When you get into their world, you can at that point start finding out what's going on and see where you can slide in there and make an offer, make a transition, make a transaction. So really get into their mindset as much as you can. Get them talking as much as you can. You'll never lose by doing that. And I would say, if you are in any type of professional sales of any sort, you want to talk as little as possible. Try to work on open-ended questions. And what I mean by open-ended questions are, you do not want your question to get a yes or a no answer. Instead of saying, are you hot? Say, how do you think it feels in here? How do you think it feels to not get yes or no? How are you hot? Yes. No. Boom. Done. So try to word these things where you get people talking more, and just the more you can, the better off you'll be. Is that all right? All right.
All right. So how do you follow it with leads? It's kind of two questions that are similar. I'm going to combine them together. How do you follow it with leads? What's your process for that? And or how do you manage and nurture relationships with both potential customers and previous customers?
Okay. How do you nurture leads
Essentially.
and follow up with them? So let's go with that, and I'll have to ask what the other one was in a second. So if you are in the business of selling anything, I would strongly recommend never, ever rely on your memory. Your memory will fail you 100% of the time. A lot of companies use a term called a CRM, Customer Resource Management, I believe. That it's a software that you can go in and input. Today I talked to this person. Here are the notes, and there are several. I'm not going to push any because I don't know them all. But look up CRM. But in that software, a lot of them are free. You can put in, I talked to this person, here's our conversation, and what's the next action item? What's the follow-up? And in there, you can set an appointment for 2 weeks from now, 6 weeks from now, 6 months from now. And I don't know if this is really a question, but one thing you always want to do is get a next step. If you ever meet with someone, whether it be buying a car or in my world trying to get another point, trying to get these big transactions and sales, you always want a next step at the end of the meeting. Never just walk out with them saying, okay, we'll call you. They will never call you. It will never happen. As soon as you walk out, they have 50 other emails they have to answer. They've got a kid at home with a cold. They've got all kinds of other stuff. You just fly out the window. But when they say, if you ask the question, hey, can I call you or can I get 5 minutes in 6 months? You'll almost always get the answer, yes, 5 minutes in 6 months, sure. Because in their world, they're not even thinking 6 months away. But then when you do call 6 months later, because you put it in that CRM or that database, or you put it in their calendar, you've got their permission. And so that actually helps. That helps follow up with leads. So make sure anytime you talk to somebody, you get a next step. And whatever that may be, depending on the topic or whatever that is, always get a next step in that. All right, what was the next question?
So kind of the follow-up to that is, so that's kind of the technical process, but what does it look like when you're trying to nurture the relationship side? With, let's say you've established someone, you're starting to have a conversation, but you're trying to nurture the relationship.
So how do you nurture the relationship? I mentioned very briefly this idea of rapport. RAPPORT. And that is simply, I think I actually have my rough definition of rapport in here. Let me see. Rapport. Building rapport gives the buyer a chance to trust you, your company, your idea, and or your product. Once you build rapport, people know you, they know what you stand for, they know they can trust you, they know that you won't just drop them and leave them. You can actually start charging more for your services because they build that relationship and they know, hey, this person is what they say they are. I'm happy to pay more because I know that I will get what I pay for. So that is the biggest thing on how do you build a relationship. When I sit down with a person, I'm simply just trying to get them talking. The more you can talk, get them talking, the more they will like you. Have you ever heard that the best conversationalist on earth is somebody who talks the least, but they get the other person talking the most? How many times have you ever walked away from somebody and thought, man, that was a great conversation, I love that. And then you realize they didn't say one word. I rambled, told them about my day, the weather, what's going on my vacation last week. But they were amazing conversationalists. It's because they let you do all the talking. And so by doing, like I said, that question was, how do you nurture these relationships? Spending time with folks. I'll tell you this, I think my bishop actually told me this. The Bible calls it breaking bread. If you could ever just take somebody out to lunch, eat with them, you will actually have more of a personal connection in 1 hour of eating with somebody than you would an hour at a desk, at a conference table, on the phone, on Zoom. If you can avoid a Zoom, do it. There's absolutely nothing like face-to-face. And obviously, in today's world, it may be essential. You may not be able to get around it. I've actually got a meeting next week with the largest medical university in Arkansas, UAMS. And longtime customer, I've dealt with them for years. They're so busy, and because of their new COVID policy, we're meeting on Zoom. So you can't get around that. But if you can ever get somebody to lunch, sit down, chat with them, breaking of the bread together, it puts a bond there that they won't even realize. And just a familiarity and a comfort level.
Good.
All right.
All right, so question is, what would implementing some of these selling tactics into witnessing look like without overdoing it? Like you're not trying to sell them on church per se in that sense, but
hey, I like that. If I'm understanding the question right, how does sales cross over to witnessing? And how does what I do, what are principles I use that you would use in sales? Well, first thing I said is your presentation. Don't be sloppy. Nobody's going to be interested in a sloppy mess. Tell them, hey, I've got the best way. Because we've got the best way. We've got the best life. There's absolutely nothing like having this Holy Ghost and living the life that we've got. And so when you stand there, and just like I said earlier, how to sell yourself. When you can be extremely confident in this because there's nothing better. You can be confident in this church that anytime you bring a guest to a service, they're going to feel the power of the Holy Ghost here. They're going to hear good preaching. They're going to hear anointed music. And so you can stand there confidently. You can be articulate about what you felt, what's happened in your life. Because that's one thing nobody else can ever argue, is what has happened to you and your experience with this. And then when you, like I said, you just be yourself. Be genuine. Don't be sloppy, but be yourself. And then you can just share what's happened with you and then what God has done. Another thing on being articulate, we should all know the Scripture. We should all know the Word of God. Obviously, we're not all theologians, but you should be proficient in the basic salvation plan. So where you can articulate that clearly, freely, show people the Scripture. One thing I've done, and I'm not by any means, I'm not standing here telling you I'm the best of the best, but I actually do have Scriptures in my phone and my notes. So when times like that come, I can quickly scroll to them, find them, and have this conversation with people. So I think what I do a lot is it's whether you're selling your product, your services, or you're selling that this is the best life possible. It all really kind of blends in together. All right, what, do we have any other questions left?
Yes. What's the best advice you've ever been given on sales?
Ooh, best advice. Well, I mentioned one earlier. One of my mentors, good friends, Mike Holmes, said, tell it, don't sell it. Share the information with people. Don't push it on people. Never be pushy. Because, like I said, it'll get you a sell once, but you'll never get another sell again. Next one is, best advice. You know, one thing that, it's not the most elaborate, it's not the fanciest, it's not something that, with a bunch of frills, but this has haunted me for years. In my business is the old sports player Wayne Gretzky said, you miss 100% of the shots you never take. And when I'm sitting at my desk at work and I just don't feel like making that call, and I don't feel like going out and meeting people, I don't feel like it, that haunts me. You miss 100% of those shots. Because, you know, in my world and in the world of sales and whatever it is, it's truly a numbers game. That's all this is. If you are dressed up as Bozo the Clown and you go knock on enough doors, you'll sell something, okay? But it might be enough doors. That's the question. How many doors is it? So it's truly a numbers game. And so if you make enough calls, if you meet enough people, if you talk to enough folks, you will get there. And so that's, you miss 100% of the shots you don't take. And that's probably the one that, it's not the best, but it haunts me all the time. And probably because I'm just lazy and I don't want to make the calls and do all the work. Do we have anything else?
One of the last ones here. So give us a tip or a trick for getting people on the phone, whether you're trying to follow up with someone who came to church or you're trying to get that next lead or whatever. Okay. Getting people on the phone to like start the conversation.
How do you get somebody on the phone? First thing, you've got to have a number. That is helpful. You know, it's like that old saying, it's close only counts in horseshoes and hand grenades. You can't randomly dial a number and get the right person. So make sure you got the right number. In my world, like I said, I actually sell to government agencies, school districts, with every department in Arkansas, and I know it's the exact same in Tennessee. You can go on their website and find exactly who you want to talk to. You can get their number, you can get their job history. In Arkansas, you can go online and find out how much they make. You can find out everything about them. And I'm sure you can in Tennessee as well. I just had a complete blank. What was the question again? Getting on the phone, yes. So number one, have their number. One thing I have done, have you read the book Never Split the Difference by the author Chris Voss? I've got one hand here. Love it. I absolutely highly recommend it. If I hadn't brought these two, that probably would have been my next book. But there's a trick in Never Split the Difference that I read and I use daily. And when I get somebody on the phone, we are so programmed in our world to get to yes. Whether it be, yes, I want to buy your product. Yes, I'll go out with you on this date. Yes, I will, whatever. We are programmed to try to hurry up and get to yes. And so for decades and many years, the sales cycle has been taught of get a lot of little yeses to eventually get to the big yes. Well, how many times have you got a spam call by a telemarketer? Has anybody ever got a telemarketing call? They use that trick. Hi, how are you? Is it pretty out there today? Yes, it is. Are you there? They try to get you to a lot of little yeses so that you eventually get to the big yes, but we're immune to that. You've learned that trick. That's the oldest trick in the book, and we have learned to cut that off quickly. So if you go trying to get yeses, people will cut you off in a heartbeat. This one book, Never Split the Difference, actually teaches the exact opposite, and I've had phenomenal success with it. Go for it. Try to get a no as quickly as you can. Because when you get a no, psychologically, that puts them in control of the conversation. They told you no. They own you at that point. They can tell you what's going on. And so how I get a no early on is as soon as they answer the phone, I say, hey, Mr. Haley, did I catch you at a bad time? Did I catch you at a bad time? That's the first thing I say on the phone. Because you're going to get one of two answers. No, it's not a bad time. Well, then that actually gives you permission to move forward. Because they told you it's not a bad time. If they say, yes, it is, great. When is a good time to talk? When can I call you back? Because at that point, they'll answer. If it's not a good time, it's life. We all have moments that aren't good to talk on the phone. But if it's not a good time, they'll tell you. If they can talk, they've just said no, psychologically giving you permission to speak and permission to move forward on whatever you're trying to say. So get a no as quickly as you can. My way of doing it is, did I catch you at a bad time? Rule number one, you got to have the right number. Get that first. All right, do we have any other questions? That's it. Awesome. So I've got a couple more things for you. I got some homework, actually. Let me see here. All right. When you're on the phone this week, I want you to answer the phone with a genuine smile. Try it. Talk. When you're talking to your spouse this week, talk to your spouse with a genuine smile and see what happens and how that brightens her day, his day. Next thing. And now, outside of the circle here where we already know everybody, I want you to try to meet a genuine stranger. In the world of COVID, they might not want you to give them a hug. They might not even want you to shake their hand. But genuinely give them that same smile and with confidence introduce yourself. You never know who you're going to meet or who you're going to stumble on. And then, let me see here where we are. All right, we're wrapping up here. Do y'all have any other questions? Anything else that hasn't been texted in? Okay, I'm going to give you two things that I pray. I've prayed this for many years, and I pray it daily. The first thing I pray is, God, I want you to go with me today. But don't go with me. Don't just go with me. I want you to go beside me. God, I want you to go behind me. I want you to go in front of me. I pray, God, I want you to be in the room that I am in when I speak to people. Be in that room with us. God, I want you to talk to the people as I talk to them. I want you to shake hands with people as I shake hands with them. And I feel the Holy Ghost right now because I pray this daily. And I can promise you, God has tipped the scales in my favor way more times than I ever have deserved. But I genuinely pray, God, I want you to be with me everywhere I go. I want you to be my partner. Because it's not my spin on things, it's not my talent, it's not my ability. It's been God's hand on everything. And this is one other thing, I'll tell you this. I have learned my income is directly related to two things. What I'm giving and how much I'm praying. If I hit those two things, man, it feels like the roof's taken off the rocket here. The rocket's full of power and we're soaring. And when you learn to give freely and to pray, God will bless every effort that you do. He'll close the doors he doesn't want, but he'll open even bigger doors that he wants you to walk through. Second thing I pray, and I want y'all to read this with me. Put your name in here. And God gave wisdom and understanding, exceeding much, and largeness of heart, even as the sand that is on the seashore. Second thing I pray, God, give me your wisdom. Give me your understanding. And Lord, I desperately need your largeness of heart. And the Lord will bless that. You know, if He gives you wisdom, you're not going to fail. There's a difference between man's wisdom and God's wisdom. I'm not going to go into that topic here, but I promise you there is. And so that's what I pray on a daily basis. And going back to the very beginning, why is this class so good? Why is what you're doing so beneficial? I don't know if you're aware of this, but the government did not send this church a check this week for all the good that it's done to the community. For the lives in this room that it has changed, the government's not paying us for that. The only way the house of the Lord is going to be blessed is if we're blessed. And so it's our job to get out, dig in, do everything we can so that we can funnel that back into the church. Because once you get that cycle going, God, I want to be blessed so I can give it back to you. Do you not know how many times He's going to continue to bless you? How many times that's going to continue to flow? And so when that becomes our focus, God, I want to give to you. I want to give to your work. The Lord will provide the opportunity. He'll provide the customer. He'll provide the business transaction over and over again. And so I challenge you this week. Let's go out. It's Monday. Tomorrow's Tuesday. Let's be prosperous and victorious for the house of God. And see what God will do. Hey, I thank you. I hope this has been as much fun for you as it has been for me. I've enjoyed it. Y'all have a lovely night. This has been so much fun. But Brother Haley, you got some final stuff for us? Thank you so much.
Well, I'll tell you what, Brother Matt Herndon is a good man. He's got corn in the crib. He's deposited a lot of checks based on the tactics and all the techniques and things that he's talked about tonight. So, you know what? This is good stuff. And I love how we can apply this both spiritually, for the kingdom. If you're out witnessing somebody, if you're on the job. I was going to share this story. There's a book about, it's called The Book on Making Money, I think is what it was called. And the guy was talking about, he was just terribly broke. And he made a commitment. He was working a job, but he said, I want to double my income every year for like 6 or 7 years, right? And he was making like 12 or 15,000, maybe 20,000, like just a fairly minimal income. And every year he tried to do this, and he tried different ways. He tried to, get promotions. He tried to do this. He tried everything that he could to move up into the corporate ladder. He was always looking for a better job, even when he had a good job. Because the worst time to look for a better job is when you just get fired from a mediocre job, right? But when you're doing good and all that, and all the business owners and having employees are like, no. But the best time, to look for the best next opportunity. If you're running a successful business, but you kind of hit the ceiling, maybe it's time to start saying, what else do you have for me, God? And so this isn't a bad thing, but it's, again, the maximization and always looking to go to the next level. Anyway, so he got to the point where he was making a nice 6-figure income, and he was like, I don't know how I'm going to go on my income this year. But he went to his boss. He may or may not use most of the techniques, but he used a lot of sales techniques. And he negotiated with him, and he said, I want my income to be based on performance. And the guy said, well, okay, what does this look like? Well, he had worked himself up to managing. He was kind of an indirect sales manager. He was over a bunch of affiliate marketing programs. And he said, if I can make the company, like $5 million, or save the company X number of dollars, will you give me a percentage of that? And he said, well, that's not typical for this position. This isn't your traditional sales position, but essentially he had set him up to be that way, where he was based not just on clocking in and clocking out, not just based on time, but based on performance. Well, he tweaked some things, and he really dug in, and he saved the company like millions of dollars that year off of their advertising budget. Brought it in-house, worked like crazy, and did it, and made the paycheck. And then next year he went to them and said, and he would ask for another, a bonus or whatever. And he said, hey, look, and he negotiated with him. He negotiated for a 6-figure bonus. He sold his boss on a 6-figure bonus based on his performance. And so sales and the tactics and the techniques, tactics sounds like a bad word, but it's effective ways of going about communicating with people and getting results in a positive way. That's what he got. And so if he could do it, what could some blood-bought apostolic who are going to be giving to the kingdom, what would it look like for you to have a miraculous bonus? But if you never ask for it, you never apply the principles he talked about tonight, you'll probably never get it. Because you miss 100% of the shots you don't take. I mean, some of us, our knees are already quivering thinking about going into our boss's office asking for a bonus. But you know what? This is stepping out in faith. One last thing I wanted to say was he talked about speaking. He talked about Donald Trump, speaking at a 4th grade level. Well, Donald Miller, which is one of the books we gave away last week about marketing made simple, he talks about the curse of knowledge. If you're a business person, or you're a salesperson, or you're talking about apostolic oneness, right? You understand it at a 10 because you love it. Or maybe you think you understand it at a very high level. So we know we have to simplify it for people. So we quote to Acts 2:38, or we talk about this feature or that benefit. But he said, statistically, on average, we simplify it from a 10 down to an 8. Some really good people, we simplify it down to a 7. But people buy at a 4 or 5. As far as on a scale of 1 to 10. And so you don't want to simplify it to the point where they're like, yes, I know the sky is blue, and I have to drive on the road to get to the office to meet you. But at the same time, you have to break it down into steps and make it really simple. It's got lots of good ways of doing that. But the gap between where we think we've simplified our marketing message or our sales pitch or our witnessing pitch, if I can use that word, where we think we've simplified it down to, and where people actually understand because they're busy, not because they're dumb or ignorant or stupid or anything like that, but they're busy, there's a lot of noise in their life. That difference, the gap, is where we miss people. And that is called the curse of knowledge, where we do not communicate at the level that they understand most effectively. And again, you're not going to do is you'll get enough people, even with that curse of knowledge, that gap there. But at the same time, if we hone this, and there's another statistic, I don't remember, I tried to look up the quote, I couldn't remember it, but essentially I think it was the top 10% performers only work and put in enough effort that is like, 10% more than the average person, like 20% more, where you don't have to like just work 10 times more to have exponential results. But if you just do more than what other people, if you actually smile, even if you don't like your job, but you smile when you answer the phone, that small, simple difference can have exponential results. So, I don't want to belabor the point, but this was good content tonight, and it will hopefully make many of you thousands and thousands of dollars, and many more souls on the view, and some of you may even get a spouse out of this. So,